My name is Nia, and I am 32 years old. My brother thought he could build a luxury lifestyle on the back of my hard-earned credit, leaving me with a debt that would take 3 lifetimes to pay off. But what he didn't realize is that I'm not just his boring sister. I'm the person the government calls when they want to find where the money is hidden. Before I tell you how I turned his dream car into his worst nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been underestimated by the people who are supposed to love you most. The morning started out just like any other Monday. I was sitting at my kitchen island, sipping on a cup of Earl Grey and looking out at the Atlanta skyline from my condo. It was quiet. It was peaceful. I like my life that way. For the last 10 years, I've worked as a senior forensic auditor. To my family, that means I'm a boring accountant who stares at spreadsheets all day. They think I make maybe $65,000 a year and live in a nice little apartment. They don't know that my condo in the heart of Buckhead is paid for in full. They don't know that my spreadsheets are actually digital maps used by the DOJ to track international money laundering. I keep my head down and my business private, because in my family, if you have a dollar, they have a vision for how you should spend it. I picked up my phone to check my emails, and that's when I saw it. A notification from my credit monitoring app. Your credit score has changed. I clicked it, expecting to see a 1-point fluctuation. Instead, my heart nearly stopped. My score, my perfect, pristine 820 credit score, had plummeted to a 510. The math wasn't mathing. I don't have debt. I don't have late payments. I pay my American Express Centurion card off every single Friday. I started scrolling through the new inquiries and my blood turned to ice. There it was, a new auto loan. $162,500.89. Someone had walked into a Porsche dealership in North Atlanta and walked out with a chalk gray 911 Carrera 4S, using my name, my social security number, and a forged version of my pay stubs. And I didn't have to be a detective to know exactly who did it. My brother, Marcus, had been manifesting a luxury lifestyle for 3 years without having a job. He called himself a serial entrepreneur and a lifestyle influencer, but the only thing he was influencing was our mother's bank account. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I knew exactly where he'd be. He'd posted on Instagram the night before about his grand launch party for his new consulting firm at a rented mansion in Sandy Springs. I grabbed my keys, threw on a pair of simple black slacks and a white silk blouse. Nothing flashy, just boring Nia, and drove over there. When I pulled up to the gates of the mansion, the scene was a mess. It was barely noon on a Monday, but there were people everywhere. It was a sea of fake rich energy. I saw guys wearing $3,000 designer tracksuits that I knew they bought on credit, and girls carrying Chanel bags where the C was just a little too curvy to be real. And then, right in the middle of the circular driveway, parked like a trophy, was the Porsche. It was beautiful. The paint job was flawless. The red leather interior looked like it cost more than most people's college tuition. I walked up to it and looked at the temporary tag in the window. My name was right there, Nia Williams. "Nia, girl, what are you doing here in those church clothes?" I turned around. It was Marcus. He was wearing a head-to-toe Gucci outfit that probably cost him, or rather me, $5,600. He had a gold chain around his neck that was so thick it looked uncomfortable, and he was holding a glass of $300 Cristal like it was water. "Marcus," I said, my voice as flat as a board, "we need to talk. Now." Don't start with that big sister energy," he laughed, turning to a group of his friends. "Y'all, this is my sister Nia. She's an accountant. She's the one who makes sure my taxes are handled." His friends laughed. One of them, a guy in a fake Louis Vuitton vest, looked me up and down like I was the help. "She looks like she spends her weekends at a library, man. You sure she's related to the king of Atlanta?" I didn't blink. I've spent my career staring down men who have stolen millions from the government. Marcus and his little influencer friends were nothing. "The king of Atlanta?" I asked, tilting my head. "Marcus, I just got a notification for a loan, $162,000. Why is my name on the registration of that car, Marcus?" The smile on his face didn't drop, but his eyes went cold. He grabbed my arm, not hard, but enough to try and guide me away from his friends. "Look, Naya, don't make a scene. It's an investment in the brand. You know how the game goes. I needed the whip to get the clients. Once the first big contract closes, I'm gonna pay the whole thing off. It's a bridge loan, sis. Family helps family, right?" "A bridge loan?" I repeated. "You stole my identity, Marcus. That's not family helping family. That's a felony. You used my credit, which I have spent 15 years building, to buy a car that costs more than the house Mom lives in." "Man, stop being so dramatic," he snapped, his voice getting louder. "You've always been like this, so stingy, so by the book. You're sitting on all that money, and you won't even help your own brother get his foot in the door. I'm about to be a millionaire, Nia. I'm doing this for all of us. When I'm at the top, you think I'm gonna forget Big Mama and Mom? No, I'm gonna buy them houses. But I need the Porsche to get in the room with the big players." He actually sounded like he believed his own lies. That's the thing about narcissists. They really think their vision justifies their crimes. "You have 24 hours to take this car back to the dealership and get my name off that loan," I said, my voice low and steady. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a scream. "If you don't, I'm going to the precinct." Marcus let out a sharp, ugly laugh. "You ain't gonna do nothing. Because if you come for me, you come for Mom, and you know how she feels about her golden boy. You want to be the one who ruins my career? Go ahead, see what happens at Sunday dinner." He leaned in closer, smelling like expensive cologne and cheap audacity. "Besides, I already talked to Mom. She thinks it's great that you're finally supporting me. She said it was about time you shared some of that boring accountant money." I felt a sting in my chest, but I didn't let it show. My mother, Brenda, had been enabling Marcus since he was 5 years old. He could burn the house down and she'd complain about the quality of the matches I bought him. "So that's how it is?" I asked. "That's exactly how it is," Marcus said, straightening his fake Gucci jacket. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a $500,000 partnership to announce. Why don't you go find a corner and calculate some interests or something? You're killing the vibe." He walked away, leaving me standing next to the car I was technically paying for. I watched him go back to his fans, popping another bottle and acting like he had actually achieved something. He thought he'd won. He thought that because I was the quiet one, the boring one, I would just roll over and take it for the sake of family peace. He really thought he could play with my life and I would just write it off as a loss. I took out my phone and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the VIN number on the dashboard. Then I took a photo of the temporary tag. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. Marcus wanted to play with big boy numbers. He wanted the financial porn lifestyle without the work. He wanted to use my name to build his kingdom. Well, if my name was on the paperwork, then I technically owned the kingdom. I got into my car and dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. "Hey, Detective Mike, it's Nia Williams. Remember that favor you owed me for that offshore audit back in 22? Yeah, I need you to pull a file for me. It's about a business launch in Sandy Springs. And Mike, bring the heavy hitters. This isn't just identity theft. I have a feeling my brother is about to lead us to a much bigger fish. I hung up the phone and looked in my rearview mirror at the mansion. He thought he'd won. But he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who knows how to make assets disappear. Y'all, I knew walking into Big Mama's house that I was walking into a lion's den, but I didn't think they'd have the audacity to serve me a side of betrayal with my mac and cheese. After leaving Marcus and his fake rich friends at that rented mansion, I spent the rest of the week tightening my digital fences. I'd flagged the Porsche loan as fraudulent with the 3 major credit bureaus, but I hadn't pulled the trigger on the police report yet. I wanted to see if my family had a shred of integrity left. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Sunday dinner at Big Mama's used to be my favorite thing in the world. The house is a classic brick ranch in southwest Atlanta, the kind of place that smells like pine sol, slow-simmered collard greens, and history. Big Mama has lived there for 40 years, and she's the only person in this family who actually worked for what she has. She retired after 35 years at the post office, and she doesn't play about her piece or her kitchen. I pulled my car, a slate blue Volvo XC90 that cost me $75,000 in cash, up to the curb. I don't drive the Porsche Marcus stole or some flashy Italian sports car. I drive a tank that looks like a mom car but has a Bowers and Wilkins sound system that cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. I sat in the driver's seat for a second, smoothed out my $300 silk trousers, and checked my hidden recorder. "Stay calm, Naya," I whispered to myself. "Be the gray rock. Don't give them any motion to feed on." As soon as I walked through the front door, the noise hit me. Marcus was already there, booming with laughter. He was sitting at the head of the table, a spot usually reserved for Big Mama or my dad, Gerald, wearing a bright orange tracksuit that probably cost $2,400. He had his $200,000 Porsche key fob sitting right on the table next to his plate. "There she is," Marcus shouted, his voice dripping with fake affection. "The stingiest auditor in the A. Come on in, Naya. Grab a plate. I'm buying today." "You're buying?" I asked, setting my bag down. "With what money, Marcus?" The room went quiet for a split second. My mother, Brenda, came fluttering out of the kitchen. She was wearing a new set of 10mm gold hoops and a dress that looked suspiciously like a $1,200 Versace knockoff. "Now, Nia, don't start," Brenda said, pressing a greasy kiss to my cheek. "It's Sunday. We are here to celebrate. Your brother is finally seeing the fruits of his labor. He brought over $400 worth of premium ribeye and 3 bottles of Moet. Just sit down and be happy for him." I looked at the table. There it was. The financial porn of a man who was broke on paper but living like a king on my credit. There were $300 floral arrangements and a cake from a bakery in Buckhead that I knew cost at least $150. "I'd love to be happy for him, Mom," I said, taking my seat and kept my voice low and steady. "But it's hard to celebrate when I'm the one who actually paid for the fruits of his labor. Marcus, did you tell them about the loan you took out in my name?" Gerald, my father, didn't even look up from his plate of smothered pork chops. He was a tall, imposing man who went to an HBCU on a football scholarship and had spent the last 20 years running a consulting firm that never seemed to have an office. He was wearing a $4,000 Rolex Submariner, the kind with the green bezel, and he was sipping his champagne like he didn't hear a word I said. "Naya," Gerald finally spoke, his voice deep and dismissive. "We talked about this. Marcus needs a certain image to close these high-level deals. He's the face of the family. You're the backbone. Backbones don't need to be seen, they just need to support. Is that what we're calling identity theft now? Support? I asked. He used my social security number to buy a car that costs $162,000. My credit score dropped 300 points in 48 hours. I can't even buy a stick of gum on credit right now.
Stop being such a narcissist, Brenda snapped, throwing a dish towel onto the counter. It's always about you, isn't it? You have all that money saved up in your boring accounts. You don't even use your credit for anything fun. Why shouldn't your brother use it to build something for the whole family? He's going to pay it back. He gave us his word.
His word isn't worth the paper that forged loan is printed on, I said. Marcus leaned back, picking his teeth with a gold-plated toothpick. See, this is why you're the scapegoat, Naya. You're always looking for a reason to be the victim. I'm out here grinding. I'm out here making moves. I just signed a contract for a $3 million real estate development in Midtown. You think they're going to give a contract like that to a man driving a Toyota? I almost laughed. I knew for a fact there was no $3 million contract. I had spent Friday night running a deep dive audit on every business Marcus had registered. They were all shell companies with zero assets. If you're making $3 million, I said, then you should have no problem coming with me to the dealership tomorrow and putting the loan in your own name, right? The air in the room shifted. Gerald's hand paused over his glass. Marcus's smug grin faltered for just a microsecond before he masked it with pure gaslighting. I would, Marcus said, but my capital is tied up in the initial investment phase. Any real businessman knows you don't use your own liquidity for overhead. I'm using your credit as leverage. It's a standard move. You're just too small-minded to understand the big fish world. Small-minded? I repeated. Marcus, you're committing fraud. And Mom, Dad, you're enablers. You're sitting here eating steaks bought with stolen money while I'm the one who has to deal with the feds when this car inevitably gets repossessed. Nobody is getting repossessed, Brenda yelled. Gerald, tell her how Marcus is helping us. Gerald wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. Nia, your brother has been very generous. He's actually helping me with a new acquisition for the firm. We're looking at a property in Cascade, a $500,000 estate, and we're going to use your name for the mortgage, since your debt-to-income ratio is so clean. It's for the family legacy. My heart didn't race. It didn't even skip a beat. It just went cold. They weren't just stealing a car, they were planning to steal my entire future. They wanted to use me as a human shield for a $500,000 mortgage. I looked over at Big Mama. She had been quiet the whole time, just picking at her greens. She caught my eye and gave me a look that said, I told you they were vultures. She was the only one who knew I wasn't just an auditor. She was the one who paid for my first accounting certification when I was 22. I'm not signing for a house, I said firmly. You don't have to sign, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a sinister, playful tone. We already have your electronic signature on file from the Porsche paperwork. The math is already done, sis. We're just letting you know as a courtesy. They thought they had me. They thought that because they were the loud ones, they could just steamroll over my quiet life. They were so busy being flashy and arrogant that they didn't notice I hadn't touched a single bite of the food Marcus bought. I didn't want any of his dirty ribeye in my system. I stood up and grabbed my bag. I think I've heard enough. Where are you going? Brenda asked, her voice high-pitched and defensive. We haven't even had the peach cobbler. You're always so dramatic, Naya. You're going to ruin Sunday dinner over a little bit of paperwork?
I'm not ruining dinner, Mom, I said, walking toward the door. I'm just going to go set some boundaries. You guys always say I'm boring and predictable. Well, I'd hate to disappoint you. I walked out to my car, the sound of Marcus's laughter following me through the screen door. He thought he was the king of Atlanta. He thought he was the smartest person in the room because he found a way to hack the system using my life. But as I pulled away from the curb, I tapped the screen on my dashboard. I dialed the direct line to the Forensic Audit Division of the IRS. "This is Nia Williams," I said, my voice calm and professional. "I'd like to report a suspected money laundering scheme involving a shell company and a fraudulent $500,000 mortgage application. Yes, I have the account numbers. And yes, I'd like to be the primary witness." He thought he'd won because he had the keys to a Porsche. But he forgot one small thing. I still had the keys to the safe where all the family secrets were kept, and I was about to change the locks. Now, y'all won't believe how peaceful I felt driving away from Big Mama's house while my brother's laughter was still echoing in my ears. It's a strange thing, isn't it? When people think they've got you backed into a corner, they start acting like they've already won the lottery. Marcus, my mom, even my dad, they were all so busy high-fiving each other over the easy lick they thought they had in me that they didn't even notice I hadn't shed a single tear.
I drove through the streets of Atlanta, passing the flashy clubs and the neon lights of Peachtree Street. I saw kids Marcus's age valet parking cars they couldn't afford, trying to look like somebody for the gram. It's a disease in this city, honey. Everybody wants to be a boss, but nobody wants to do the paperwork.
After I left that den of thieves they call a family dinner, I didn't head to a modest little apartment like they thought I did. They've never actually been to my place. I always make an excuse. It's too small, it's messy, I'm renovating. In reality, I pulled my Volvo into the private gated parking garage of a glass and steel high-rise in the heart of Buckhead. The security guard, a nice man named Mr. Henderson, who's seen more real money than Marcus could ever dream of, tipped his hat to me. I took the private elevator up to the 40th floor. When the doors opened, I wasn't stepping into some dusty auditor's cubicle. I stepped onto white oak herringbone floors that cost $42 per square foot. My living room has floor-to-ceiling windows that look out over the entire canopy of the city. I walked past my kitchen, which features a $12,000 Sub-Zero refrigerator hidden behind custom cabinetry and a $15,500 Wolf double oven range that I only use to make tea and the occasional batch of cookies for Big Mama. I tossed my $2,800 Celine handbag onto the island, which, by the way, is a single slab of Calacatta marble that cost me $20,000, and I headed straight for my office. This is the part where the gray rock finally shows her true colors. To my family, I'm just Nia, the girl who went to a state school and got a steady job with the government. They think I'm boring because I don't wear logos across my chest. What they don't know is that while I was at that HBCU they love to brag about Marcus almost attending, I wasn't just studying accounting. I was building a proprietary data mining algorithm. 6 years ago, I sold the licensing rights for that algorithm to a major cybersecurity firm for $4,750,000. Then I took that money and invested it in a diversified portfolio of REITs and tech stocks that now generates a passive income of $325,000 a year, and that's after taxes. I don't work for the DOJ because I need the paycheck. I work there because it gives me access to the most powerful financial tracking tools in the world. And right now, all those tools were pointed directly at Marcus Williams. I sat down at my desk, a custom piece of walnut that cost $8,000, and fired up my $3,500 Mac Studio setup. I have 4 monitors. One tracks the markets, one stays on my encrypted work portal, and the other 2, well, they were currently displaying every single digital footprint Marcus had left in the last 24 hours.
Let's see what the King of Atlanta has been up to, I muttered. I pulled up his business accounts. He'd registered a company called Platinum Vision Consulting. He thought he was being slick using a registered agent in Delaware, but the paper trail was as messy as a toddler with a crayon. I scrolled through the bank statements I'd acquired through my investigative channels. My brother had received a Paycheck Protection Program loan, a PPP loan for $248,900.50 during the tail end of the pandemic. The problem? He didn't have any employees. He didn't even have a physical office. He'd used a photo of Big Mama's house as his corporate headquarters and forged her signature on the utility bills to prove residency. I felt a heat rise in my chest that had nothing to do with the tea I was sipping. He didn't just steal from me. He put Big Mama's house, her only asset, the place she's lived for 40 years, at risk of a federal seizure. "Oh, Marcus," I whispered, clicking through to the next screen. "You really have the audacity." But it got worse. I tracked the wire transfers from that PPP loan. He hadn't just spent it on the Porsche. He'd been investing in a crypto mining scheme that looked like a classic pig butchering scam. He'd sent $85,000 to a wallet address tied to a known fraud syndicate in Eastern Europe. He wasn't just a thief, he was a mark. He was trying to be a predator, but he was actually the prey. Then I looked at the mortgage application my dad had mentioned. They had already submitted it, using my social security number and a doctored version of my $320,000 brokerage statement as collateral. They were trying to buy a $675,000 investment property in Cascade. The loan officer on the application was a man named Terrence Vance. I recognized the name immediately. Terrence was an old friend of my father's from his college days. He was a known dirty broker who specialized in creative financing for people who couldn't get a loan at a real bank. I leaned back in my chair, which is a $4,000 Herman Miller Eames executive seat, and I stared at the screen. They thought I was the boring one because I didn't react when they insulted me. They thought I was disposable because I didn't brag about my wins. They spent so much time gaslighting me and calling me a narcissist for having boundaries that they forgot I'm the one who literally gets paid to find people exactly like them. I pulled up a fresh document and started a subject dossier. Subject A, Marcus Williams. Primary crime, federal wire fraud, identity theft. Subject B, Gerald Williams. Primary crime, conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud, money laundering. Subject C, Brenda Williams. Primary role, enabler/accessory. I spent the next 4 hours, well into the middle of the night, compiling every forged document, every fraudulent transfer, and every lifestyle photo Marcus had posted on Instagram that contradicted his tax filings. I had photos of him holding $10,000 in cash, while his tax return claimed he made less than $12,000 for the entire year. The math was finally mathing, but not the way he wanted it to. Around 3 in the morning, I stood up and walked to my balcony. The air was crisp, and the city felt like it was mine. I looked down at the tiny cars moving on the highway below. To the world, I'm just a woman in a Volvo. I'm just a pharmacist or a librarian or whatever other boring job they think a Black woman with a quiet life must have. But I'm the storm they didn't see coming. I picked up my phone and sent a single text message to my dad. I knew he was awake. He always stayed up late drinking that fake rich cognac and dreaming of the big leagues. The Cascade mortgage. I saw the application. We need to talk about the collateral you listed.
I'll be over tomorrow evening to sign the final papers. Make sure Marcus is there with the Porsche. I want to see what my credit actually bought." I watched the read receipt pop up instantly. Then the typing bubbles appeared and disappeared. He was nervous. He should be. I went back inside and closed my laptop. I didn't need to do anything else tonight. I had the evidence. I had the assets, and most importantly, I had the expert ally already moving into position. Tomorrow wasn't just about a mortgage. It was about setting the first trap. I walked into my bedroom, which features a custom-made bed with a $7,000 mattress and $1,200 Egyptian cotton sheets. I laid down and closed my eyes, falling into the kind of deep, peaceful sleep that only comes when you know you're about to burn a whole kingdom to the ground. He thought he'd won because I agreed to come over and sign the papers. But he forgot one small thing. I never sign anything without reading the fine print. And the fine print on this deal? It had a technical trap that was going to strip them of everything they ever loved. Y'all, I barely had my first cup of coffee on Tuesday morning before my phone started screaming at me. After I sent that text to my father about the mortgage, I knew the flying monkeys would be out in full force. See, in a narcissistic family dynamic, when the head of the house feels threatened, they don't come at you directly. They send the enabler to do the dirty work with a side of guilt and a sprinkle of "Jesus wouldn't like this." The caller ID said "Mom," but the vibe said "Federal Emergency." "Nia, baby, thank God you picked up," Brenda wailed into the phone. She wasn't just crying, she was performing. This was the kind of sobbing you hear on the front pew of a funeral for someone they didn't even like. "We haven't slept a wink. Your brother, oh Nia, they're going to take him away from us." I sat back on my $10,000 custom mohair sofa and looked out at the Buckhead skyline. I kept my voice small, thin, and shaky. The gray rock was in full effect. "What happened, Mom? Is Marcus okay?" "The dealership, Nia. They called him this morning. They said there's a discrepancy with the down payment and the source of funds. They're talking about calling the bank's fraud department. Marcus is a wreck. He's just a young man trying to build a legacy for this family, and now they're trying to treat him like a criminal." I almost choked on my $400 Manuka honey. Marcus is 34. In what world is a 34-year-old man with a stolen Porsche a young man trying to build a legacy? "Mom, I told him that loan was a problem," I said, sounding like I was on the verge of tears myself. "I'm so scared. If the bank looks into my credit, they're going to see I didn't sign those papers. Am I going to jail, Mom?" No, sugar. That's why we need you to come to Big Mama's house right now," she said, her voice instantly shifting from sobbing to business mode. "We have a plan to fix everything. We just need you to sign a little piece of paper, a retroactive gift letter. It just tells the bank that the $35,000 for the down payment was a gift from you to Marcus. That way, the money is clean and the fraud red flags go away. We can all just move on as a family." A gift letter. Bless her heart, she really thought she was playing chess, but she was barely playing checkers with the box upside down. If I signed that letter, I was legally admitting that I authorized the use of my identity and that the funds were mine. I'd be tied to his fraud forever. "Okay, Mom, I'll be there. I just want this to go away," I whispered. "That's my good girl," she cooed. "Hurry up. Your father and Marcus are waiting." I hung up and felt a cold, sharp smile spread across my face. I didn't call the police. I didn't call my lawyer. I walked into my office and opened a hidden folder on my encrypted drive. I pulled up a document I drafted at 2 in the morning,
a private intra-family loan agreement and sworn affidavit of asset origin. It looked official because it was. I used the exact same font and header style as the DOJ's internal audit disclosures. I grabbed my keys and my $2,900 Goyard tote bag. Inside, tucked between my $500 Hermes notebook and my $1,200 Louis Vuitton wallet, was a high-gain digital recorder that looks exactly like a standard USB stick. When I pulled up to Big Mama's house 40 minutes later, the Porsche was parked crooked in the driveway. It looked like a giant, expensive mistake, sitting on the cracked concrete. I walked inside, and the tension was so thick you could have cut it with a dull butter knife. Marcus was pacing the living room, wearing a new pair of $1,200 Balenciaga sneakers and a $3,000 Amiri hoodie. He looked like a man who was one insufficient funds notification away from a heart attack. My father, Gerald, was sitting in Big Mama's armchair, looking through a stack of papers with a focused scowl. "Finally," Marcus snapped as I walked in. "The bank is on my neck, Naya. I got a business meeting at 2 o'clock and I can't be looking like I'm under investigation. Did Mom tell you what we need?" "She said something about a gift letter," I asked, looking around the room like I was confused. "But Marcus, I don't have $35,000 to give you. I'm just an auditor. I'm still paying off my own car." "It's not about the actual money, you simple girl," Gerald said, standing up. He held out a single sheet of paper. "It's about the documentation. We just need your signature saying you gave him the money. We'll handle the rest. We're going to use the funds from the Cascade mortgage to pay you back under the table. It's just a paper trail move." "So I'm lying to the bank?" I asked, my heart fluttering. I made sure to take short, shallow breaths so they could see my chest moving. "Dad, that sounds like bank fraud. I could lose my CPA license. I could go to jail." "Nobody is going to jail," Marcus yelled, slamming his hand on the dining table. "You're so obsessed with the rules. This is why you'll always be stuck in a cubicle while I'm out here changing the world. You're family. Family covers for each other. Now sign the damn papers so we can get to the real money in Cascade." I looked at the gift letter. It was a sloppy mess. They'd even misspelled irrevocable. "I'll sign it," I said, my voice trembling. "But I'm so nervous about the IRS. If they see a $35,000 gift and no record of where it came from, they'll audit me. I can't have an audit, Dad. You know what I do for a living." Gerald narrowed his eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "I brought a side agreement," I said, pulling my document out of my bag. "It's just something for our internal records. It says that this gift is actually a loan that Marcus is personally liable for. It also has a section where you both acknowledge that the Porsche down payment came from personal cash reserves, so the IRS doesn't think it was laundered. If I have this, I can show my boss if they ever ask questions about my credit. It protects me while I'm protecting Marcus." Marcus grabbed the paper and skimmed it. He didn't see the trap. He didn't see the clause on page 2 that stated, "The undersigned parties hereby swear under penalty of perjury that all previous signatures provided for the North Atlanta Porsche acquisition were executed by Marcus Williams and Gerald Williams without the presence of Nia Williams." He also didn't see the part where they were agreeing to a forensic audit of their personal bank accounts in the event of a default. "This is just a bunch of boring accounting talk," Marcus scoffed. "If I sign this, you sign the gift letter?" "Yes," I said, "and I'll sign the Cascade mortgage papers tonight, too. I just need to feel safe, Marcus. Please." "Fine," Marcus said, grabbing a pen. "You're so dramatic. Anything to make you feel like the smart one for 5 minutes." He scribbled his name with a flourish. Gerald followed suit, signing with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd just secured a 6-figure payday. They didn't even read the back page.
I took their signed document and tucked it into my bag. Then I picked up the pen and signed their fake gift letter. "There," I said, standing up. "It's done. We're all protected now."
"See? Was that so hard?" Brenda said, coming over to hug me. She smelled like cheap perfume and desperation. "Now, why don't you go home and get some rest? We'll meet you at the steakhouse tomorrow for the big celebration. Marcus is buying everyone a $500 dinner to celebrate the new house."
"I'll be there," I said.
I walked out to my Volvo and sat in the driver's seat. I pulled out the digital recorder and stopped the file. I had it all. I had the audio of them admitting they needed me to cover for the fraud. I had a signed confession that they had forged my name on the original car loan. And I had their signatures on a document that gave me legal permission to audit their lives. The math was finally starting to look beautiful. I looked at the Porsche in the driveway one last time. Marcus was inside, probably already calling his expert ally Terrence to tell him the boring sister had folded. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd bullied me into becoming his accomplice. But he forgot one small thing. I didn't sign that gift letter with my legal signature. I signed it with a non-standard mark that I'd already registered with my bank as a signal for signing under duress. The bank wasn't going to clear those red flags. They were about to turn into a full-blown siren. And Marcus? He didn't just sign a loan agreement. He signed his own arrest warrant. Now, y'all know Buckhead on a Wednesday afternoon is a specific kind of circus. It's where the old money of Atlanta tries to ignore the new money influencers who are busy taking photos of their salads for the gram. After I handed Marcus and my father those signed documents, the ones they thought were their golden tickets to a $675,000 mortgage, they felt like they were untouchable. They were so high on their own supply that Marcus decided we needed to do a power brunch at La Bilbocay. If you aren't from the A, just know that La Bilbocay is the headquarters for people who want everyone to know how much they're spending. It's all white tablecloths, French accents, and $500 bottles of wine at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I pulled my Volvo up to the valet behind my Porsche. He hopped out of that car like he was the CEO of the world, wearing a $2,400 monogrammed Louis Vuitton tracksuit that was so loud it was practically screaming. He had on a pair of $1,200 Balenciaga Triple S sneakers that looked like oversized bricks on his feet. He handed the valet a $50 bill like he was doing him a life-changing favor, but I saw the way he checked his bank app the second the valet turned his back. I stepped out of my car and, honey, I was the definition of quiet luxury. I was wearing a $3,500 Loro Piana cashmere sweater in a soft cream color, paired with $2,000 Max Mara trousers. I didn't have a single logo on me. To the untrained eye, meaning my family, I looked like a boring pharmacist on her lunch break. My only jewelry was a $4,500 Cartier tank watch that had been a gift to myself for closing a multi-million-dollar fraud case last year. "Naya, girl, you really need to let me take you shopping," Marcus said, laughing as we walked toward the patio. He leaned in and whispered, "That sweater looks like something Big Mama would wear to a quilting bee. You're worth millions on paper now, sis. Dress like it." "I like to stay comfortable, Marcus," I said, keeping my gray rock face perfectly still. "Besides, I'm just glad we're all getting along." We were joined by my mother, Brenda, who was draped in a $1,800 Gucci shawl, and my father, Gerald, who was looking stiff in a $3,000 Tom Ford blazer. They were beaming. They looked like they'd already moved into the Cascade estate. "We're more than getting along," Brenda said, patting my hand with her manicured nails. A $250 set she'd clearly charged to the emergency card I'd forgotten to cancel.
We're finally acting like a unit, a dynasty. Gerald, tell her the news.
Gerald leaned in, his $3,000 Rolex Submariner glinting in the Georgia sun. Terrence says the mortgage is moving through underwriting at lightning speed. He's bypassed the standard verification since I'm a preferred partner. We should be at the closing table by Friday. $1,200,000 in total assets under the Williams name by the end of the month. I took a sip of my $35 glass of Sancerre. That's amazing, Dad. I'm just glad I could help. The waiter came by, and Marcus didn't even look at the menu. He just pointed at the most expensive bottle of champagne on the list, a $1,200 bottle of Dom Perignon Plenitude 2. Bring us 2 of those, Marcus said, loud enough for the tables around us to hear. And keep the oysters coming. We're celebrating a 7-figure win. The flying monkeys were in full flight today. Brenda kept talking about how she was going to hire a $2,000 a month interior designer for the new house, and Gerald was already looking at buying a second Porsche, this time an SUV for business meetings. They were spending money that didn't exist, based on a loan that was built on a foundation of sound. It was classic narcissist behavior. They weren't just happy to have the money, they were addicted to the status of having the money. Marcus spent the next hour talking over everyone, gaslighting the waiter about the temperature of the wine, and making sure everyone knew he was a big fish. You know, Naya, Marcus said, leaning across the table while digging into a $65 plate of Cajun chicken, you could really learn something from me. You've been working for the government for 10 years, and what do you have? A Volvo and a closet full of beige clothes. I've been active for 3 months, and I'm already the talk of Buckhead. It's about audacity. It's about taking what's yours. I guess I just don't have your vision, Marcus, I said. I looked past him to a table about 15 feet away. There was a man sitting alone, wearing a simple blue suit and reading a physical newspaper. He looked like any other businessman, but I knew better. That was Agent Miller. He was part of the federal task force I'd been feeding information to for the last 48 hours. He wasn't there for the brunch. He was there for the surveillance. Marcus reached into his pockets and pulled out a sleek black credit card. He slid it across the table toward the waiter with a flourish. Put it all on this, Marcus said, and add a $500 tip. I like to take care of the people who take care of me. I recognized that card. It was the platinum card he'd opened in my name using the forged documents from the Porsche dealership. He'd already run up a balance of $18,400 in less than a week. Marcus, is that my card? I asked, my voice intentionally trembling. It's our card now, sis, he said, not even looking at me. Don't be a scapegoat. I told you, I'm putting all the business expenses on here to build the points. You'll thank me when I book us all a first-class trip to Dubai in December. It's $10,000 a seat, and we're going to be in the front of the plane. But I didn't authorize those charges, I whispered, loud enough for Agent Miller to catch every word. You signed the gift letter, Nia. That makes us partners, Brenda hissed, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was listening. Stop acting like a child. You're lucky Marcus is even letting you be a part of this. He's the golden boy for a reason. He's the one who's going to make sure we never have to worry about a $1,000 mortgage ever again. The waiter came back with the receipt. Marcus scribbled his name, well, my name disguised as his signature, and stood up. Come on, Marcus said. I've got a meeting with a private investor who wants to put $250,000 into the real estate firm. Nia, you go back to your little office and crunch those numbers. We'll see you at dinner tomorrow. They walked out of the restaurant like they owned the street. Marcus clicking his Porsche key fob so the lights would flash and attract more attention. I stayed behind for a moment, slowly finishing my wine. Agent Miller stood up, folded his newspaper, and walked past my table. He didn't look at me,
but as he passed, he dropped a small folded piece of paper onto my lap. I waited until I was back in my Volvo to open it. The note was short. The card transaction was flagged. We have the signature match. The private investor Marcus is meeting at 4 o'clock. That's an undercover agent. We're moving the timeline up. The red wedding is a go for the dinner tomorrow night. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but I didn't let it show. I just started the engine and drove back to my Buckhead high-rise. They thought they were the big fish in the pond. They thought they had successfully gaslit the boring sister into being their personal ATM. They were so busy playing fake rich that they didn't realize the water in the pond was being drained. Marcus thought he was about to get a $250,000 investment, but he forgot one small thing. In the world of high-stakes fraud, if a deal looks too good to be true, it's usually because the person on the other side of the table is wearing a wire. And as for that $2,800 brunch, that was the last meal Marcus was going to have that didn't come on a plastic tray. Now, I need y'all to lean in close for this part, because this is where the perfect family mask didn't just slip, it shattered. After I left that brunch at Les Belles Bouquet and read the note from Agent Miller, I knew the clock was ticking. Marcus was out there playing boss with an undercover fend, but something about the way my father, Gerald, had been acting at the table was sticking in my craw. He wasn't just happy for Marcus, he was relieved. And in my line of work, relief usually means a debt you can't pay is about to be someone else's problem. I got back to my Buckhead penthouse, kicked off my $2,000 Max Mara trousers, and sat down at my workstation. The sun was starting to set over Atlanta, casting a long golden shadow over the city, but I didn't have time to admire the view. I had a digital mountain to climb. I pulled up the file on my father's business, GW Strategic Partners. For as long as I can remember, Dad has been the professional of the family. He's the HBCU graduate who never missed a Sunday service and always had his suits pressed at the most expensive cleaners in the city. He'd talk for hours about Black excellence and building a legacy, but I noticed his legacy never seemed to have a physical office. It was always just him. A $3,000 leather briefcase, and a revolving door of investors who looked like they were allergic to a W-2 form. I started running a deep trace on his business accounts, bypassing the surface-level fluff. I used a custom script I'd written for the DOJ to flag internal consistency errors. Basically, I was looking for the moments where the money stopped making sense. "Let's see where the rabbit hole goes, Dad," I whispered, my fingers flying across my $800 mechanical keyboard.
I found the first red flag within 20 minutes. GW Strategic Partners had received a wire transfer for $450,000.55 3 months ago. The source? A shell company called Chateau Holdings, based in the British Virgin Islands. Now, y'all, chateau might sound fancy, but in the world of forensic auditing, it's a dog whistle for money laundering. I dug deeper. I traced the chateau account back through 4 different banks until I hit the motherlode, the master ledger for a high-end construction firm that had been under investigation for bribing city officials. My father wasn't just an enabler for Marcus. He was the big fish laundering the bribe money for the very people I was paid to catch. But then I found the thing that made my stomach do a complete flip. I opened a hidden folder on my dad's private server labeled Family Trust. I expected to see college funds or maybe a life insurance policy. Instead, I saw a scan of my own birth certificate, my social security card, and my signature perfectly forged on a power of attorney document dated 3 years ago. He hadn't just used my credit for a car or a house.
He had been using my name as the primary beneficial owner for every single one of his shell companies. If the feds moved in on the money laundering case before I finished my investigation, I wouldn't just be the witness, I'd be the lead defendant.
He really did it, I said to the empty room. He didn't just use me. He set me up to take the fall for his entire life of crime. The gray rock inside of me wanted to stay calm, but the daughter in me was screaming. I thought about all those Sunday dinners at Big Mama's house. I thought about how Gerald would sit at the head of the table, lead us in prayer, and then lecture me about being too cold and too focused on money, while he was literally signing my name to federal crimes. The audacity was so thick it was suffocating. I pulled up his recent acquisition logs. He hadn't just been looking at that $675,000 estate in Cascade. He'd already put a down payment on a $2,400,000 villa in Costa Rica under my name. He was planning his exit strategy. He was going to let Marcus get caught with the Porsche, let the boring daughter take the rap for the laundering, and then vanish into the sunset with the bold coin life.
The math was finally mathing, and the answer was pure evil.
I didn't panic. I'm a Williams, and if there's one thing we know how to do, it's hold a grudge until it turns into a plan. I pulled up my secure line to Detective Mike and Agent Miller.
I have the offshore links, I told them when they picked up, and I have the POA forgery. My father is the architect. He's the one moving the $3 million for the developers. He's using Marcus as a loud distraction so nobody looks at the quiet accounts.
We see it, Naya. Agent Miller's voice was like gravel. We've been tracking the chateau wires. We were just waiting for the link to the U.S. accounts. You just gave us the keys to the kingdom.
Good, I said, my voice as cold as a Buckhead winter. Because I'm not just giving you the keys, I'm going to open the door for you. We're still on for the dinner tomorrow night at Chops. I want them to have one last big baller meal before they start eating off of tin trays.
I hung up and looked at the photo on my desk. It was a picture of me and Marcus when we were kids, standing in front of Big Mama's house. We looked so happy. We looked like a family. I took the photo, turned it face down, and slid it into my desk drawer. I spent the next 3 hours preparing the technical trap. Since Dad had made me the beneficial owner of his shell companies, I technically had the legal right to move the funds. I didn't steal the money, I'm not a criminal, but I did move every single cent of that $3 million into a restricted escrow account controlled by the DOJ. I left exactly $100.75 in his main account, just enough so the account wouldn't close, but not enough to buy a pack of gum in Buckhead. Then I went to my wine cellar and pulled out a bottle of $500 Patek Philippe-themed champagne I'd been saving. I didn't open it, I just looked at the label. Legacy, I whispered. You wanted a legacy, Dad? I'm going to give you one that the history books will never forget. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in years. The Grey Rock wasn't just a defense mechanism anymore, it was a weapon. They thought they had successfully gaslit me into being their sacrificial lamb. They thought they had used my boring life to fund their flashy crimes. They were so busy looking at the fake rich glitter Marcus was throwing in the air that they didn't see the forensic auditor standing in the shadows, holding the scissors to their safety net. Tomorrow was the red wedding. Tomorrow was the dinner where Marcus was going to announce his partnership and Dad was going to celebrate his acquisition. And I was going to be the one to pick up the check. He thought he'd won because he had my signature on a piece of paper. But he forgot one small thing. In my world, a signature isn't just a name. It's a tracker. And I just tracked him all the way to the end of the line. Now, y'all might think I'm some kind of cold-blooded robot for what I was about to do next, but you have to understand something. When your own father uses your name to hide $3 million in blood money from a bribe scheme, he isn't your father anymore. He's a liability. And in the world of high-stakes auditing, you don't hug a liability, you liquidate it. After I found that forged power of attorney in my father's hidden files, I didn't get a wink of sleep. I spent the rest of the night watching the digital clock on my $3,000 bespoke nightstand flip from 2 to 3 to 4 in the morning. By 5 o'clock, I was showered, dressed in a $2,000 charcoal gray suit by Theory, and heading to a place that doesn't show up on any Buckhead must-visit lists. I drove down to a small, unassuming diner on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place where the coffee is strong enough to peel paint, and the waitresses don't care about your Instagram following. I pulled my Volvo into the back lot and walked inside. Sitting in the corner booth was a man who looked like he'd been carved out of Georgia granite. This was Detective Mike. To the rest of the world, he's a grizzly veteran of the Atlanta Police Department's fraud unit. To me, he's Uncle Mike, the man who used to give me $5 bills for every A I got on my report cards, while Marcus was busy getting suspended for hustling snacks in the cafeteria. Mike looked up from a plate of eggs that cost maybe $8.75. He had a battered leather folio in front of him that I knew contained enough evidence to bury half of the fake ballers in the city. "Naya," he said, his voice sounding like he'd been gargling gravel. "You look like you haven't slept since the Obama administration. Sit down." "I can't eat, Mike," I said, sliding into the booth. I pulled an encrypted thumb drive out of my $1,600 St. Laurent clutch and pushed it across the table. It's all on there. The Chateau Holdings wires, the $3 million in bribe money, and the forged power of attorney. Mike didn't touch the drive. He just stared at me. "You know what happens when I give this to the feds, right? Gerald isn't going to a white-collar camp. He's going to a hard labor facility for 20 to 25 years. And Marcus? That boy's going to be someone's project in the yard for at least 15. "I know," I said, my voice steady. "But Mike, they're trying to take me down with them. They've already submitted a mortgage application for a $675,000 estate using my Social Security number. They've got $2,400,000 waiting in Costa Rica. If I don't move first, I'm the one the FBI is going to be tackling at brunch." Mike sighed and finally took the drive, tucking it into his pocket. "I've known your father since we were at that HBCU together 30 years ago. He was always flashy, always wanted the $500 suits and the $200 shoes when the rest of us were eating ramen. But I never thought he'd sell out his own daughter." "He didn't sell me out," I corrected him. "He used me as a human shield. There's a difference." I leaned in closer. "I need the technical trap ready for tonight. I've already moved the $3 million into the DOJ escrow account, so Dad is going to see a balance of $100.75 when he checks his phone today. He's going to panic. He's going to think he was hacked. I need you to make sure Terrence, that dirty loan officer, stays on the line and tells him the closing is still on. We need them all in that private room at Chops tonight." "We'll be there," Mike said. "I've got the quitclaim deed drafted for the Cascade house. Since they used your identity to buy it, you're the legal owner. The second the feds move in, you're going to sign that property over to the state as part of the asset forfeiture. It'll show the feds you weren't a co-conspirator. It's your get-out-of-jail-free card." "Thank you, Mike," I said. I stood up to leave, but I stopped. I had one more thing to do. The gray rock has to be certain. I needed to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there wasn't a single piece of humanity left in the man I used to call Dad. I walked back to my car, pulled out my phone, and dialed Gerald's number.
He picked up on the second ring. Nia, just the girl I wanted to talk to. Listen, I was just looking at the Cascade paperwork. We're moving the Unity dinner up to 7 o'clock. Marcus is bringing his private investor. It's going to be a $4,000 night, baby. We're celebrating the Williams dynasty.
Dad, I said, keeping my voice soft, like I was the quiet scapegoat he thought I was. I'm scared. I saw some weird notifications on my credit report this morning. Are you sure this mortgage is legal? I don't want to get in trouble. If we just give the car back and cancel the house, I can help you guys fix your finances the right way. I have some savings, maybe $50,000 I can give you to get Marcus's business started for real. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear him breathing. This was his one last chance. If he had said, "You're right, Nia, let's stop this," I might have called Mike and told him to hold off. I might have found a way to save him. Then Gerald laughed. It was a cold, arrogant sound.
$50,000? He spat. Nia, you really are small-minded. 50 large won't even cover the taxes on what we're about to pull in. You need to stop being so church girl and start being a Williams. The mortgage is fine. The car is fine. You just show up tonight, wear something that doesn't look like it came from a thrift store, and sign where Terrence tells you to sign. Don't ruin this for the golden boy. Marcus has worked too hard for you to get cold feet now. He worked hard? I asked quietly. He stole my identity, Dad. And you should be proud he chose yours, Gerald snapped. It shows you've actually done something right with your boring little life. Now, I don't want to hear another word about legal or illegal. You be at Chops at 7 or so help me, I will tell the whole family and everyone at the church that you're the reason your brother's dreams died. You want to be the one who breaks Big Mama's heart? Because that's what will happen if you don't cooperate. He was using the church mother card. He was using Big Mama as a weapon. He was gaslighting me with the very things that were supposed to be sacred. I understand, Dad, I said. I'll be there, 7 o'clock. That's my girl, he said, his voice instantly turning back into that fake rich charm. And wear those earrings I like, the ones that look like they cost $10,000. I hung up the phone. My hand wasn't shaking. He didn't just reject the one last chance, he spit on it. He confirmed everything I'd found in those digital files. He didn't see a daughter, he saw an asset to be liquidated. I sat in my car for a long moment, watching the sun hit the windshield of my Volvo. I thought about Sunday dinners and the way he'd lead us in prayer while planning to steal my future. I thought about Marcus, laughing while he spent $18,000 of my money on champagne and tracksuits. The math was done. The audit was closed. All that was left was the execution. I pulled out of the diner parking lot and headed back to Buckhead. I had a lot to do before 7 o'clock. I had to coordinate with the expert ally, I had to finalize the projector reveal, and I had to pick out the perfect outfit for a red wedding. He thought he'd won because he'd successfully bullied me into silence. He thought his golden boy was about to become a king. But he forgot one small thing. In a house of cards, the person at the bottom is the only one who knows exactly which card to pull to make the whole thing scream. Y'all, there is an old saying that if you give a man enough rope, he'll either build a bridge or hang himself. My father and brother were currently braiding that rope into a noose and acting like it was a designer tie. After my talk with Detective Mike, I knew the red wedding was inevitable. But a part of me, maybe the little girl who still remembered Sunday school lessons about forgiveness, needed to give them one last chance to save themselves.
I drove over to my parents' house in Cascade. It's a large, sprawling McMansion that looks impressive from the street, but if you look closely, the lawn is patchy because they won't pay the $200 monthly landscaping fee, and the paint is peeling near the gutters. It's the house version of my brother, flashy on the outside, but structurally unsound. I pulled my Volvo into the driveway and saw Marcus's Porsche, my Porsche, sparkling in the sun. He'd clearly spent $60 on a hand wash. I took a deep breath, adjusted my $2,000 Max Mara blazer, and walked inside. The smell of expensive cigars and cheap desperation hit me as soon as I opened the door. Gerald and Marcus were in the study, which is really just a room filled with books they've never read and a wet bar stocked with $400 bottles of cognac that they bought on my credit. "Nia, there's the girl of the hour," Gerald shouted. He was leaning back in a leather chair that I knew cost $3,500, swirling a glass of amber liquid. "Terrence just called. The underwriters are satisfied. We're clear to close on the new estate tomorrow morning before the dinner. We're moving up in the world, baby."
Dad, Marcus, can we talk? Just us? I asked, sitting on the edge of a velvet sofa that felt like it was losing its stuffing. Marcus looked up from his phone. He was wearing a fresh pair of $1,100 Dior sneakers. "If this is about the credit score again, Nia, I don't want to hear it. I already told you the $500,000 referral fee I'm getting from this real estate deal is going to fix everything. You're being a total narcissist, making this about your little 3-digit number when we're building an empire." I ignored the insult. "I'm not here to talk about the score. I'm here to offer you a way out." The room went silent. Gerald set his glass down. "A way out of what? We're about to be the most powerful family in the zip code." "I know things," I said, keeping my voice low. "I know the Cascade mortgage isn't just a house. I know about the $3 million in investments you've been moving. And I know the feds are starting to look at people like Terrence." I leaned forward, looking my father in the eye. "Dad, if you cancel the Cascade closing right now, and if Marcus takes that car back today, I will handle the rest. I have saved up $450,000 from my boring job and my investments. I will give you the money. I will pay off Marcus's debts, I'll help you settle with the bank, and I'll help Marcus start a legitimate business. No more shell companies, no more forgery. We can just be a family again. We can go to Big Mama's on Sunday and not have to lie about where the food came from." It was the most honest I'd been with them in years. I was offering them nearly $500,000 of my own clean money just to keep them out of a prison cell. Marcus started laughing. It wasn't a joke laugh, it was a mean, jagged sound that filled the room. $450,000, Nia? You really are pathetic. You're over here offering us pocket change when we're playing for millions. You think I want to run some legitimate car wash or whatever boring dream you have for me? I'm the golden boy. I'm meant for the $500,000 watches and the private jets. You're just mad because you've worked 10 years for what I'm gonna get in 10 minutes. Gerald didn't laugh, but his face hardened into something I didn't recognize. "Nia, I thought I raised you to be smarter than this. You're over here trying to save us with your little pittance of a savings account? That $450,000 wouldn't even cover the interest on the moves I'm making. Dad, the money you're making is going to get you 20 years, I whispered. Is a villa in Costa Rica worth never seeing Big Mama again?" Gerald stood up, towering over me. The fake rich mask was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated greed. "You are the scapegoat for a reason, Naya. You've always been the weak link. You have no vision. You have no balls. You're sitting on nearly $500,000 and you're driving a Volvo? You're an embarrassment to this family.
If you don't show up at CHOPS tomorrow to sign those final administrative papers Terrence needs, I'm going to make sure you're erased. I'll tell Big Mama you've been stealing from me. I'll tell the church you're a liar. I will ruin the only reputation you have."
"So that's it?" I asked, standing up. "You're choosing the $3 million over me?"
"I'm choosing the Williams legacy," Gerald said, turning his back on me to pour another drink. "And right now, Marcus is the legacy. You're just the help. Now get out of my house. I have a 7-figure deal to finalize, and I don't need your boring energy dragging me down."
I didn't say another word. I didn't cry. I didn't even argue. I just turned and walked out the front door. As I walked past the Porsche, I saw Marcus watching me through the window, smirking. He thought he'd successfully bullied me into submission. He thought he'd won because I didn't fight back. But as I got into my Volvo, I pulled out my phone. I saw a notification from my bank. My father had just tried to log into the family trust account, the one where he thought the $3 million was sitting. I watched as the login failed alert popped up on my screen. Then I watched as the account balance $100.75 alert was sent to his phone. I sat there for a second, waiting. 1, 2, 3. Through the walls of the house, I heard a muffled scream of rage. I heard a glass shatter. Marcus shouted something about the hackers.
They didn't want my $450,000 of clean money. They wanted the $3 million of blood money. Well, now they had neither. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I looked at the house in the rearview mirror, a house built on lies, with a lawn that was dying and a family that was already dead to me. I pulled out my expert ally list and checked off the last box. Offer one last chance, rejected. The Grey Rock was now a mountain. I drove back toward Buckhead, already thinking about the menu at CHOPS. I wondered if they'd let me order the $200 Wagyu steak before the FBI arrived, or if I should just stick to the appetizers. After all, I'm a boring auditor. I like to keep things simple. He thought he'd won because he had the audacity to threaten me. He thought he was the king and I was just the help. But he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who's been doing the bookkeeping for this kingdom for years, and I just found a $3 million error that's about to cost him everything. Now, y'all know when a narcissist loses their grip on the money, they don't just get mad, they get dangerous. I sat in my quiet Buckhead living room, sipping on a cup of tea that cost $45 for a small tin, and watched the digital chaos unfold. My phone was vibrating so hard on the marble counter it sounded like a jackhammer. My father and Marcus were calling me every 30 seconds. They were frantic, they were terrified, and most of all, they were confused. I let it ring. See, I knew exactly what they were seeing on their screens. After I moved that $3 million into the DOJ-monitored escrow account, their primary business account was sitting at $100.75. To a man like Gerald, who had built a whole identity out of GW Strategic Partners, seeing a balance that couldn't even pay for a decent dinner in Buckhead was like looking into his own grave. Finally, I picked up. I didn't say hello. I just waited for the explosion. "Naya, where have you been?" Gerald's voice was a ragged edge of a scream. "The account is gone. The $3 million, it's not there. I called the bank and they said there's a legal hold on the funds. What did you do? You're an auditor. Fix this right now." I kept my voice soft, almost whisper quiet. The Grey Rock doesn't yell. The Grey Rock just exists. "Dad, calm down. I saw the alert on my end too," I lied. "It wasn't me.
It looks like a Tier 1 security freeze because of that mortgage application Terrence pushed through. The bank's fraud detection software flagged the Chateau Holdings wire. It's standard procedure when you move that much liquidity into a fresh account.
There was a long silence. I could hear Marcus in the background, probably pacing his room in those $1,100 Dior sneakers, breathing like a cornered animal.
Standard procedure? Gerald repeated, his voice dropping an octave. Can you clear it? I already started the process, I said, playing the boring fixer to perfection. Since my name is on the beneficial ownership papers the ones we filed, I was able to talk to the compliance officer. I told them it was a legitimate family asset transfer. They're going to release the hold, but they need a physical verification tonight. A physical verification? What does that mean? Marcus shouted, grabbing the phone from my father. Naya, I have people I owe money to. I can't have my capital locked up like this. It means we all need to be together to sign the release, I said, and we need to do it somewhere public and professional so the bank representative can see we're a high net worth family unit. It's a optics thing, Marcus. You know how the big players move. I could practically hear the greed re-entering their systems. If I told them to meet me at a police station, they would have run for the hills. But if I told them we were meeting to unlock the millions at a place where they could show off, they'd walk into a furnace if there was a $500 stake at the end of it. I've already booked the private founders room at Chop's Lobster Bar for 7 o'clock, I said. It's a $5,000 minimum, but I'll put it on my personal account for now. We're going to have a unity dinner. I've also invited Mom's friends from the church and a few of your HBCU alumna buddies, Dad. We need the flying monkeys, our family friends, there to act as character witnesses for the bankrupt. If they see we're pillars of the community, they'll bypass the forensic audit. Now that's my girl. Gerald's voice was suddenly full of that fake rich charm again. I knew you'd come around. You're finally thinking like a Williams. A private room at Chops? That's where the real deals happen. I'll make sure everyone is there. Marcus, wear the Tom Ford suit. We're going to show them exactly who we are. I have one more surprise, I added. I've put together a legacy presentation. It's a video tribute to the firm and Marcus's new partnership. I want to play it on the big screen in the private room while we have our toast. It'll make the bank rep feel comfortable about where the money's going. A tribute video? Marcus chuckled. Finally, I'm getting the respect I deserve. Make sure you use the photos of me with the Porsche. People need to see the brand is real. I'll make sure they see everything, Marcus, I said. Everything. I hung up the phone and felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't because of the lies. It was because of how easy they were to trick. They were so blinded by the desire for status that they didn't even wonder why a boring auditor was suddenly booking $5,000 private rooms and inviting the whole church congregation. I spent the next 3 hours at my workstation finalizing the presentation. It wasn't a tribute video. It was a digital map of their destruction. I had the bank statements. I had the forged signatures. I had the audio recording of Marcus admitting he stole my identity. I even had the high-resolution photo of the VIN number on the Porsche matched to the fraudulent loan application. I'd spent $400 on a high-speed encrypted projector that I'd already had Uncle Detective Mike sneak into the Chop's private room under the guise of the restaurant's AV team. The stage was set. I picked up my phone and sent a group text to my mother's inner circle, the church mothers who lived for gossip and Sunday dinners. Hi everyone, it's Nia. We're having a surprise legacy celebration for Marcus and Dad tonight at Chops in Buckhead at 7. They don't know the whole community is coming, but they've achieved something so big that we want everyone to see. Please be there by 6:45. My treat. I knew they wouldn't miss it.
To them, Chops was the pinnacle of success. They'd be there in their best Sunday hats, ready to witness the Golden Goy's coronation. They were the ultimate flying monkeys, people who would spread the news of the Williams family's success to everyone in Atlanta. Which meant they would also be the ones to spread the news of their arrest to everyone in Atlanta. Around 5 o'clock, I started getting ready. I didn't wear the boring clothes today. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out a $4,000 charcoal-colored silk dress by the row. I put on a pair of $2,000 Manolo Blahnik pumps. I looked in the mirror and didn't see a scapegoat or a quiet daughter. I saw a woman who was about to audit her family out of existence. I grabbed my Goyard tote bag, making sure my DOJ credentials and the forensic reports were tucked safely inside. As I walked out to my Volvo, I checked my bank app one last time. The $3 million was sitting in the escrow account, safely under the protection of the federal government. My father's account was still sitting at $100.75. He was currently on his way to a $5,000 dinner he couldn't afford to celebrate a legacy that didn't exist in front of a crowd that was about to watch him fall. The math was finally mathing, and the answer was 0. I pulled out of the garage and headed toward Buckhead. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange. It was beautiful. It was the kind of night where you'd expect something grand to happen. And something grand was definitely going to happen. He thought he'd won because he bullied me into hosting a dinner. He thought he was the king and I was just the girl who paid the bills. But he forgot one small thing. I'm the one who wrote the script for tonight, and in my version of the story, the golden boy doesn't get the crown. He gets the silver bracelets. Now, y'all, if you've never been to Chop's Lobster Bar in Buckhead, just know it's the kind of place where the butter probably costs more than your first car. It's all dark mahogany, deep leather booths, and the kind of lighting that makes everyone look like they've got a 7-figure bank account. I pulled up to the valet, handed the keys to my Volvo to the young man, and took a deep breath. Tonight wasn't just a dinner. It was a funeral for a lifestyle built on lies. I'd booked the Founder's Room, a private wood-paneled suite that tucked us away from the main dining area. When I walked in at 6:45, the flying monkeys were already there. Sister Mary and Sister Patterson from the church were huddled in the corner, wearing their finest Sunday hats, the ones with the feathers that look like they could take flight at any moment. They were whispering about the blessings the Williams family had received, their eyes wide as they took in the crystal glassware and the menu where the cheapest appetizer was $45. "Nia, baby, look at you," Sister Mary cooed, clutching her $300 Michael Kors bag like it was a holy relic. "Your mama said we were celebrating something big. Is it true? Did Marcus finally make his first million?" "We're just here to celebrate the family, Sister Mary," I said, giving her a practiced, boring smile. "I'm just glad y'all could make it. Have some of the crab cakes. They're $75 a plate, so please eat up." I watched them swarm the hors d'oeuvres like locusts in silk dresses. I turned to the waiter, who was actually a junior officer working with Detective Mike, and gave him a small nod. He knew exactly what to do with the legacy presentation thumb drive I'd handed him earlier. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doors swung open and the royalty arrived. Marcus walked in first, and honey, you could have heard him coming from 3 blocks away. He was draped in an $8,000 Tom Ford suit in a shade of midnight blue that practically glowed. He had a fresh $2,000 haircut and a new watch, a Patek Philippe Nautilus that I knew for a fact cost $65,000. I didn't even have to check my alerts to know he'd used the private investor deposit, the one from the undercover agent, to buy it. Following him was my father, Gerald, looking every bit the big fish in a $5,000 bespoke gray suit, and my mother, Brenda, who was wearing so much gold she looked like a walking treasury. "The Williams are in the building," Marcus shouted, throwing his arms out as the church mothers broke into applause. He started working the room like he was running for office, kissing hands and slapping backs. "Sister Mary, you look beautiful. Don't worry about the bill tonight. It's on the firm. We're playing with big boy numbers now." Gerald walked straight over to me, his eyes darting around the room before landing on my face. He looked stressed, his skin a little gray despite the $3,000 Rolex on his wrist. He leaned in, smelling like $200 cologne and nervous sweat. "Naya, the bank rep," he hissed. "He's at the bar, Dad," I lied, pointing toward a man in a sharp suit sitting near the entrance. "He's just finishing some paperwork. He said once we do the legacy toast and I sign the final verification, the $3 million will be released back into your primary account. He just wants to see that the Williams dynasty is as solid as the application said." "Good, good," Gerald said, wiping his brow with a silk handkerchief. "Marcus is being a bit loud, but let the boy have his moment. He thinks he's a king, and after tonight, he will be." We all sat down at the long mahogany table. The financial porn was on full display. I watched as Marcus ordered 3 bottles of $600 Screaming Eagle wine for the table. He didn't even look at the vintage. He just pointed at the price tag. Brenda was busy showing off her new $12,000 diamond tennis bracelet to the church mothers, telling them it was a gift from her successful son. The waiter started bringing out the main courses. We're talking $250 Wagyu steaks, $180 twin lobster tails, and sides of truffle mac and cheese that cost $55 a pop. "I want to make a toast." Marcus stood up, clinking his crystal glass with a silver spoon. He looked around the room with a smug, arrogant grin. "Most of you know me as the golden boy. You saw me struggling. You saw me grinding. But today, the grind is over. We just closed a 7-figure real estate deal in Cascade. We've got the Porsche, we've got the estate, and most importantly, we've got the vision. To the Williams family, the new royalty of Atlanta." "To the Williams family," the church mothers chirped, sipping their expensive wine like it was grape juice at a potluck. "And I want to thank my sister, Nia," Marcus said, his voice dripping with a sarcasm that only I could hear. "Even though she's a little boring and by the book, she finally realized that family comes first. She helped us secure the collateral we needed to take this to the next level. Thanks, sis. Maybe I'll buy you a new Volvo for Christmas." The room erupted in laughter. I just sat there, the gray rock in the middle of a hurricane. I checked my watch. 7:20. "Actually, Marcus," I said, standing up slowly. The room went quiet. "Since we're talking about vision and collateral, I think this is the perfect time for the legacy presentation I prepared. I want everyone to see exactly how this dynasty was built." "Yes, play the video," Brenda clapped. "Show them my boy's success." The waiter dimmed the lights. A large 120-inch projector screen lowered from the ceiling. Marcus leaned back in his chair, crossing his Dior-shod feet, ready to bask in his own glory. Gerald took a long, shaky sip of his wine. The screen flickered to life. But it wasn't a video of Marcus with the Porsche. It wasn't a tribute to GW Strategic Partners. The first slide was a high-resolution scan of my credit report from last Monday, showing the 820 score. Then, with a dramatic whoosh sound effect I'd added, the screen flashed to the 510 score.
What is this? Marcus sat up, his face losing its color. The next slide appeared, a side-by-side comparison of my legal signature and the forged signature on the $162,000 Porsche loan. The church mothers stopped chewing. Sister Mary put her fork down.
"Naya, what are you doing?" Gerald growled, standing up. "Turn that off, now!"
I'm just showing them the collateral, Dad, I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. The screen shifted again. This time, it was an audio file. I pressed a button on my phone, and the room was filled with Marcus's voice from the diner. It's not about the actual money, you simple girl. It's about the documentation. We just need your signature saying you gave him the money. We'll handle the rest. Then, the big fish reveal. The screen displayed the master ledger for Chateau Holdings and the wire transfers of the $3 million in bride money, with my father's private bank account number highlighted in a bright neon red.
"This is a lie!" Brenda screamed, her voice cracking. "My son is a good boy! Gerald, do something!"
But Gerald couldn't do anything. He was staring at the screen where a new document had just appeared, the forged power of attorney he'd used to try and frame me for his money laundering. Now, y'all won't believe what happened next, I said, looking directly at the church mothers, because while Marcus was buying $65,000 watches and Dad was planning his escape to Costa Rica, they forgot one very important rule of accounting. I turned to Marcus, who was trembling so hard his wine glass was rattling against the table. You thought you'd won, I said. You thought you'd successfully gaslit the boring sister into being your sacrificial lamb. But you forgot one small thing. I looked toward the back of the room. The bank representative wasn't sitting at the bar anymore. He was standing by the door, and he wasn't alone. 6 men in windbreakers with FBI emblazoned in bright yellow letters on the back were filing into the room. He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I still had the keys to the safe, and I just handed them to the feds. Now, y'all, I wish I could have taken a picture of the look on Marcus's face when those FBI jackets filled the doorway. It was the kind of look you only see when someone realizes the free lunch they've been eating for years just came with a bill they can't pay. The room, which was just full of laughter and the clinking of $600 wine glasses, went so quiet you could hear the ice melting in the seafood towers. Agent Miller stepped forward, his face as hard as a brick wall. He didn't look at the church mothers, and he didn't look at the $500 stakes. He looked straight at my brother. Marcus Williams, you're under arrest for federal wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy, Miller said, his voice cutting through the room like a cold wind. Wait! Marcus shouted, jumping up so fast he knocked over a glass of that expensive Screaming Eagle wine. The red liquid soaked into the white tablecloth like a crime scene. Do you know who I am? I'm the CEO of Platinum Vision. This is a mistake. My sister, she's the one who handled the paperwork. She's an auditor. Nia, tell them it's all legal. He was trying to throw me under the bus before the handcuffs even touched his wrists. The audacity of this man. He was wearing a $65,000 watch that I technically paid for, and he was trying to use me as a shield. I can't tell them that, Marcus, I said, leaning back in my chair. I took a slow sip of my water. I didn't need the wine. I was drunk on the justice. Because I'm the one who gave them the paperwork. I'm the one who tracked the $162,000 you stole for that Porsche. And I'm the one who recorded you admitting you forged my name. You snake! Brenda screamed, lunging across the table toward me. Sister Mary had to grab her by her $12,000 diamond-clad arm to keep her from falling. "How could you do this to your own blood on a night like this, in front of the church?" "In front of the church is the best place to do it, Mom," I said. "Since you all love to talk about bringing things to the light, I figured I'd give you a spotlight." While Marcus was being turned around and patted down, my father, Gerald, tried a different tactic. He stood up slowly, adjusting his $5,000 bespoke suit like he was still the big fish in the room. He looked at Agent Miller with that practiced HBCU alumni president smile that usually got him out of trouble.
"Officer, I am sure we can clear this up," Gerald said, his voice smooth and deep. "I have a very close relationship with the district attorney. There's been a massive misunderstanding regarding a $3 million asset transfer. My daughter is simply confused about the nature of our family trust."
"I'm not confused, Gerald," Agent Miller said, and I noticed he didn't call him Mr. "We have the wire logs from Chateau Holdings. We have the forged power of attorney you tried to file to frame Nia for the money laundering, and we have the testimony from Terrence Vance. He's already in custody, and he's been talking for the last 3 hours to save his own skin." The big fish finally deflated. Gerald dropped back into his $3,500 leather chair like a puppet with its strings cut. The sweat was pouring down his face now, ruining the collar of his $800 shirt. The church mothers were having a field day. Sister Mary was fanning herself with a dessert menu, her eyes wide. "Lord have mercy," I heard her mumble to Sister Patterson, and here I thought they were blessed. They weren't blessed, they were just boosting. Marcus started to cry, not a quiet, dignified cry, but a loud, messy sob that didn't care about his $8,000 Tom Ford suit. "Nia, please, talk to them. I'll give the car back. I'll get a job. Don't let them take me." "It's too late for one last chance, Marcus," I said. "I offered you a way out yesterday. I offered you $450,000 of my own money to fix this quietly. You called me small-minded and pathetic. You told me you were meant for the private jets and the mansions." I stood up and picked up my glass. The room was buzzing with the sound of the FBI agents barking orders and the flying monkeys whispering their judgment. "I'd like to make one final toast," I said, my voice clear and steady. The agents paused for a second, and even Marcus stopped blubbering to look at me. "To the Williams legacy. You always told me I was the scapegoat. You told me I was the boring one who didn't understand the grind. Well, it turns out the grind is a lot easier when you aren't committing federal crimes." I looked at my father, who couldn't even meet my eyes. "To the truth," I said, "it's the only thing in this room that didn't cost a fortune, but it's the only thing that's going to last." I finished my water and set the glass down with a firm clink. "Take them away," Agent Miller ordered. As the agents led Marcus and Gerald out of the private room in silver bracelets, the restaurant fell into a stunned silence. Brenda was slumped over the table, sobbing into a $65 plate of Cajun chicken. The church mothers were already on their phones, likely typing out the most viral prayer request in the history of the congregation. I grabbed my Goyard tote bag and started to walk out. I didn't look back at the lobster tails or the wine. I had a lot of work to do. I had a quitclaim deed to sign and a perfect 820 credit score to reclaim. I walked past the bar, where the manager was looking at me with a mix of awe and terror. "The bill is covered," I told him, tapping my American Express Centurion card on the counter. "Every cent of that $5,000 minimum. Consider it a donation to the community's education on forensic auditing." I stepped out into the cool Buckhead night air.
The valet brought my Volvo around, and for the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe.
They thought they'd won because they had the audacity to steal my name. They thought they could use me to build a kingdom and then toss me aside when they were done.
But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw Marcus being shoved into the back of a black SUV. He looked small. He looked cheap.
He thought he'd won, but he forgot one small thing. I'm not just the girl who handles the paperwork. I'm the one who knows exactly where all the bodies and the bank accounts are buried. And I was just getting started on the aftermath.
Now, y'all, if you ever want to see what falling from grace looks like in real time, you should have been at the Federal Processing Center that night. I didn't have to go. I could have gone back to my Buckhead penthouse and slept on my $1,200 Egyptian cotton sheets, but I'm a finisher. I wanted to see the look on their faces when the fake rich glitter finally stopped sparkling. I walked into the precinct about an hour after the arrests. The air in there didn't smell like Chop's $200 Wagyu. It smelled like floor wax, stale coffee, and regret. I smoothed out my $4,000 charcoal silk dress and walked past the glass partitions.
And there they were. Marcus was sitting on a metal bench, looking like a neon sign in a graveyard. His $8,000 Tom Ford suit jacket was wrinkled, and the police had already made him take off his $1,100 Dior sneakers because of the laces. He was sitting there in his socks, staring at the floor.
My father, Gerald, was being processed at the counter. He was trying to maintain that big fish dignity, but it's hard to look like a mogul when a $5 an hour clerk is making you put your $3,000 Rolex Submariner into a plastic bag.
"Naya!" Marcus screamed the second he saw me through the glass. He jumped up, looking like a frantic bird in a cage. "Naya, you have to tell them! Call Terrence! Call the lawyer! I can't be in here, man! This place is filthy! Tell them it was a prank! Tell them you gave me permission!"
I already told them the truth, Marcus, I said. My voice was low, hitting that gray rock frequency that usually drives him crazy. And Terrence isn't coming. He's 2 doors down in an interrogation room, and word on the street is he's already signed a confession that pins the whole $3 million laundering scheme on Dad. Gerald turned around at the sound of my voice. The mask was gone. He didn't look like a legacy builder anymore. He just looked like an old man who'd run out of lies.
"You really did it,"
Gerald whispered.
"You destroyed your own father. For what? A credit score? A sense of justice?"
"I didn't destroy you, Dad," I said. "You destroyed yourself the second you forged my name. You were willing to let me go to prison for 20 years just so you could have a villa in Costa Rica that cost $2,400,000. You chose the money. I'm just the one who made sure the math was accurate." Just then, a female officer walked up to the counter holding a heavy plastic bag. She started listing the items they were confiscating from my father. 1 gold-toned watch, 1 leather briefcase, 1 silk tie, and 4 credit cards, she droned.
I recognized those cards. They were all in my name.
"Actually, officer," I said, stepping closer to the desk, I pulled my DOJ credentials out of my Goyard tote. Those 4 cards are part of an active identity theft investigation. I'm the primary victim. I'd like them flagged as evidence immediately.
Gerald looked like he'd been slapped. "Nia, please, the mortgage, the house in Cascade."
"The Cascade house is already under a lis pendens notice," I said. "And since you used my identity to buy it, I've already signed the paperwork to hand it over to the state for asset forfeiture. You aren't getting that house, Dad, and neither is Marcus."
"What about Mom?" Marcus blubbered, his voice cracking. "What's she gonna do?
She's gonna be homeless. Mom can go live with Big Mama, I said. Big Mama's house is the only thing in this family that was bought with honest money. It's the only place left where the Williams name isn't a joke. But don't worry, I've already hired a $200 an hour private security firm to watch Big Mama's place. I don't want any flying monkeys or church gossips bothering her while you guys are away. The officer grabbed Marcus by the arm to lead him back toward the holding cells. He started struggling, his Dior socks slipping on the linoleum floor.
"You're a narcissist, Naya! A cold-blooded narcissist!" he yelled, his voice echoing through the hall. "You think you're better than us? You're just a boring accountant who's gonna die alone in a glass building."
I didn't blink. I didn't even flinch. I just watched as the heavy steel door clicked shut behind him. I turned back to my father. He was staring at the plastic bag containing his $3,000 watch like it was his last friend on Earth.
"The church is going to hear about this, Naya," he said. One last pathetic attempt at a threat. "Sunday dinner is never going to be the same."
"You're right about that, Dad," I said. "But then again, you won't be there to see it. The feds told me that with the evidence I provided, they're looking at a mandatory minimum of 15 years for you. Marcus is looking at 10. I turned to leave, my heels clicking on the hard floor with a rhythmic, satisfied sound. "Enjoy the silver bracelets, Dad," I said over my shoulder. "They're the only pieces of jewelry you actually earned." I walked out of the building and into the humid Atlanta night. I looked at the city lights and felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I'd been carrying since I was a little girl. The golden boy was gone. The big fish was caught. I got into my Volvo and checked my phone. I had a notification from my credit app. Alert. Fraudulent account for $162,000 has been removed. Your credit score has increased to 815. I leaned back and laughed. It was a short, punchy sound. The math was finally perfect. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I saw a black Cadillac Escalade following me. It had been behind me since I left Chops. He thought the story was over because the police were involved. But he forgot one small thing. In Atlanta, the feds aren't the only ones who come looking for $3 million when it goes missing. Y'all, they say the wheels of justice turn slow, but when they finally run you over, they don't leave much behind but a memory and some legal fees. 6 months had passed since that red wedding dinner at Chops, and the Atlanta humidity was finally starting to break. I stood outside the Richard B. Russell Federal Building, smoothing out my $4,500 Bottega Veneta wool suit. I didn't have a single logo on me, but I looked like a woman who owned the sidewalk. Inside that courtroom, the fake rich show was officially canceled. Marcus didn't look like the king of Atlanta anymore. He was sitting at the defense table in a wrinkled, off-the-rack suit that probably cost $200 at a discount warehouse. His $8,000 Tom Ford Blazers had all been seized by the feds. He didn't have his $65,000 Patek Philippe on his wrist either. He just had a pair of cheap plastic glasses and a look of pure, unadulterated terror. My father, Gerald, looked even worse. He'd lost weight and his skin had a gray, sallow tint that no amount of legacy talk could hide. He wouldn't even look at me. He just stared at the American flag behind the judge like he was waiting for it to give him a pardon. Brenda, my mother, was sitting in the gallery, sobbing into a damp tissue. She was wearing a plain black dress, no jewelry in sight, mostly because I'd already had the feds claw back that $12,000 diamond tennis bracelet Marcus bought her with my stolen credit. "Nia, please," she'd whispered to me in the hallway before the session started. "Talk to the prosecutor.
Tell them Marcus is a good boy. He just got confused by the grind. If he goes to prison, he'll die in there. Bless his heart, he's not built for that life."
I just looked at her. He was built enough to steal my identity, Mom. He was built enough to watch my life fall apart while he popped $600 bottles of champagne. The math finally caught up to him.
The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd seen 1,000 golden boys pass through her court, didn't waste any time. "Marcus Williams," she said, her voice echoing off the marble walls, "for the counts of federal wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy, I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release." Marcus let out a sound like a wounded animal. He slumped into his chair, his Dior-less feet dragging on the floor. "And Gerald Williams?" the judge continued, her eyes turning cold as she looked at my father. "As the architect of this money laundering scheme, and for the forgery of legal documents to frame your own daughter, I sentence you to 22 years. 22 years. The big fish had finally been fried.
I didn't cheer, I didn't clap. I just sat there, the gray rock in a room full of crumbling sandcastles. I watched as the bailiffs led them out in the same silver bracelets they'd worn at the restaurant. This time there was no valet waiting outside, just a bus with bars on the windows. After the sentencing, I had one more piece of business. I drove over to the Cascade Estate, the house they'd tried to steal using my name. The sold sign was already being hammered into the front lawn. Since I was the legal owner of record, I'd authorized the sale. The closing price, $1,200,000. After the government took their cut for the restitution of the Chateau Holdings bribe money, I was still left with a check for $480,050.
I walked through the empty rooms, looking at the patchy grass and the peeling paint. This was the legacy they were willing to kill my future for. It felt small. It felt cheap.
I got back into my Volvo and drove straight to Big Mama's house. She was sitting on her porch, rocking in her chair. I sat down next to her and handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for $100,000, the exact amount my father had tried to borrow against her house for his Costa Rica escape. "It's over, Big Mama," I said. She took the envelope, didn't even open it, and just patted my hand. "I know, sugar. I heard the news from the church mothers. They're all talking about how you destroyed the family. They say you're cold." "I'm not cold, Big Mama," I said, looking out at the quiet street. "I'm just accurate." "Well," she chuckled, "accuracy is a lonely business, but at least your bed is paid for." I left her there and headed back toward Buckhead. My credit score was back to an 820. My bank accounts were secure, and my family was exactly where they belonged. But as I pulled into my penthouse garage, I noticed a package sitting at my door. No return address, just a small black box tied with a red silk ribbon. I opened it and my heart skipped a beat for the first time in months. Inside was a single gold-plated toothpick, exactly like the one Marcus used at the restaurant, and a note written in a hand I didn't recognize. "The $3 million is gone, but the debt didn't go to jail with them. See you soon, Nia." He thought the story ended with the judge's gavel, but he forgot one small thing. In this city, the people who lose $3 million don't care about a gray rock. They only care about getting paid. So, y'all, after the judge finished reading Marcus and Dad for filth, I didn't stick around to watch the bailiffs haul them off. I had a flight to catch. I went back to my penthouse, packed my $2,800 Goyard trunk, and took one last look at the Atlanta skyline. People think no contact is a punishment, but honey, it's actually a vacation. I moved into a custom-built estate in the mountains of North Carolina. We're talking $3,500,000 of pure, unadulterated peace. My master closet is bigger than the house Marcus tried to steal, and it's filled with $5,000 Loro Piana coats and $4,000 Hermes bags that I didn't have to ruin anyone's credit to buy. The best part? The silence. No more Sunday dinner gaslighting, no more Marcus calling me boring while he's wearing a $65,000 watch he can't afford the insurance on. I heard through the grapevine, Sister Mary from the church just can't help herself, that Brenda is still telling people Marcus is on a secret government mission. Bless her heart, she's going to be delusional for free until the day she dies. She tried to call me last week, probably looking for a $1,000 donation for the church bake sale, but her number is blocked. My piece doesn't have a price tag. I sat on my deck this morning, looking at the fog rolling over the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was sipping on a cup of tea that cost $80 an ounce, and I checked my credit score one last time. 850. A perfect score for a life that's finally in balance. Being the Grey Rock wasn't easy. It's hard to stay quiet when people are spitting on your name, but the math always wins in the end. I'm not the boring sister or the scapegoat anymore. I'm the woman who owns her name, her money, and her future. I realized that my self-worth isn't tied to how much I can do for people who don't respect me. It's tied to the boundaries I set and the respect I give myself. I'm sitting here now, and for the first time in 32 years, I don't owe anybody a single thing. Not my money, not my time, and definitely not my forgiveness. They thought they could break the weakest link in the chain, but they forgot that the smallest part of the machine is usually the one that controls the power. I'm happy, truly. But as I was looking through the mail this morning, I saw a letter with a return address from a federal prison in Georgia. It wasn't from Marcus, and it wasn't from Dad. It was from someone I hadn't thought about since my days at that HBCU, and what they wrote inside changed everything.